So we're going to go ahead and get started. And basically, within Tririga, change orders can only be created by CFM staff. Change orders are typically created by an SRE or an RE. There's a big warning up front that you have to enter your change orders as they are awarded in ECMS. Once the change order is input, you have to issue and complete it before you start inputting another change order. The reason being is that Tririga houses these things by dollar amount and budget roll-ups, and you saw the cost code that we applied towards the line item in the RFQ. We still have to apply cost codes in the change order, so we start tracking the cost based on those change orders. So you have your original contract and any of the change orders that are associated with it. Another heed of warning is if you make a mistake in the money amount or budget code and you've already issued or completed it, you have to email the field support staff to get their assistance to fix it. So we'll go through those steps. We'll identify how you start creating that change order. Your manual has all of this information to get to the change orders. I believe Lori's already there. She's navigated over to the COs, POs, PCOs, and RFQs. You'll go ahead and click on change order. Once you get into the change order, there's going to be an add button in the upper right hand corner. And you get your lovely little change order screen. And there are some conditions on the change order as far as naming conventions go. And I have a little cheat sheet, so you don't have to go through all this stuff, but I'm going to send it through to Lori first so she can take a look and make sure I've got it right. But with the change orders, you've got your the CO number, which is the change order number that was created in ECMS. So that first field, you'll have to have that first. And then, again, that's the number that comes from ECMS, so it's going to be your POO number. And then within the name section, we also want you to include that POO number as part of the name. And then if you're putting a CO or an SA, you'll want to put that number directly next to it. So it'd be P sample being, what are you doing here, Lori? POO 20 and then CO 1B, and then whatever the name of the change order is going to be. And then we have a field which is down below, which is the manual award date, which is required, which is really your SF30. When your SF30 was signed, we are changing the label to reflect SF30 signature date, so that's the date we'll put in there. It shows in, that's your block 16C on your ECMS change order. And then we have the obligation number going back up. So I'm just following the guide. It has all of this information in there. Your obligation number, block 12 on the SF30. So you'd put that inside that obligation field. Lori went ahead and hit create draft just so she doesn't lose the changes that she's making. So as soon as you get your name and date in, you can hit create draft. Then we want to go to the contract mod type. There's 1 equal change order, 2 equal administrative change, 3 equal supplemental agreement, and 4 is other. So you've got the drop down for your mod type. And all of this is documented in your training manual. And then we can go ahead and apply a description.
These numbers correspond to what's in ECMS.
So enter your description or enter the scope of the modification in that description field. We've already talked about obligation number. Then we want to enter the contracting officer's name. And then the definitized by. If this is gosh, that word's so hard. Definitized by another modification, enter that modification number here. Or if it definitizes, so there's two fields coming up, definitized by or definitizes. So you'd have to put the mod number in one of those fields if in fact that is definitization of one or is definitized by another. Then we move on to the summary section, which is the dates. We already talked about the manual award date, which is your SF30 sign date. And then we go into your time extension. The other dates, if you want to populate them, if you have them, you can. But if this change order is for a time extension, this is where you apply that time extension. If we were working with a PCO or an RFQ and it had a time extension, we're going to automatically populate this based on that RFQ that was submitted. So we will, or potential change order as well. So we're working on getting that automation done. The next thing is your liability code. That is going to become a required field. It is necessary for reporting, so that must be filled out. We have the list of what A through H stands for within the document. And then your SF30 clause. And those are codes, but then there's a definition behind those codes within the training doc. And then the last thing here, SA forwarded price, yes or no. So this is if you and your contractor have agreed on the cost and time prior to the start of work on the contract mod. And the next thing is to import the contract. So what's happening here is we need to be able to connect the change order to a contract. And since a contract already exists, you'll use the Find button. It'll give you a list of all the contracts you're associated to on the project. And you'll pick the contract by selecting the radio button and then clicking OK to the right. This takes a second here because it's looking to import line items from the contract if there are any that need to be brought in. A lot of cases we've said we're going to go ahead and create our own line items, which is on the cost tab. It also, if you scroll down, it brings over your vendor company and it brings over all of the contacts who were part of that contract. So it brings over some of the information from the contract. And now we need to go in and go back to the reference section. It's right above the import contract. And we need to identify what spec class this is associated to. Basically your construction type within this contract. And then once we're done there, let's go ahead and hit save, Lori, just to keep our data. The field next to it, she put the section that it's referred to within your spec class. And then this is a lovely little box that pops up here. Anytime you make a change to the record, the system wants to know why you're making a change, and hitting save means that you're saving changes to this record. It's basically for tracking purposes of who clicked the button, what time, not necessarily why you're changing it. But in order for us to do that, this pop-up comes up. We call it the Lori window because that was the decision to make that change apply here. You don't have to type anything, just click OK.
If you just click up on the X, it won't let you go any further. You have to click OK.
All right, so then from this particular point, if you're creating the change order without any referencing documents, you can move past the section that's listed below. So scroll down, Lori. You have your related RFIs, related RFQs, related submittals, potential change orders. If you had any of those that actually initiated this change order, you would use the Find button to find that RFI and associate it back to this contract. Reason being is we need to track the start of this change order and when it actually got completed and turned into a completed change order. Once I said a little bit ago that there's a couple areas that are going to have an auto create. It's going to be the related RFQs and the related potential change orders. So if you're in one of those types of records, it's going to have a button. It'll carry all that information over here for you. So a lot of this entry will be eliminated. The next thing is, let's see, the find feature works the same way on all of these, so related RFIs, RFQs. If there is going to be another field that's going to be added that says, is there a referencing document? And if you say yes, it's going to force you to select one of these sections down below and attach that RFI, RFQ submittal, or change order. So that's in the future, like I said, probably mid month next month. Once we're done with that, we go to the cost tab and we start adding what this change order is going to reflect. So the dollar amounts that it's going to reflect. And then there's a special naming convention on this, which is going to be, in order for us to report on this very easily, the decision was to put the name of your change order. So Lori's copying that, and she's going to go to the cost tab and add a cost line item and just paste it right into the name. And then from there, we put what line item it is. If you have more than one line item, you would put a number against that after the, oh, you already did. I'm sorry, Lori, see it. And then from there, so I'm looking at the other screen as you're doing this, Lori. I kind of see you, but not 100%. The date field input, the date the SF30 was signed. Again, that date field is today's date, but it has to be the date the SF30 was signed. So out of the box, it does come in with just the date. Your pay item number, your POO number, and then this is your sequence, whether it's item one. Well, what happened there, Laura? I thought you pasted that. Oh, different field. I apologize. Yep. So this is your line item 1, so your POO and then your line item 1. And then we get down to the change amount. So we go down to where it says changes, and there's a change amount field. You put the sum of this particular line item. And then lastly, we have to apply the cost code. So the cost code is typically, on any change order, is typically your contingency, which is a 0.13 account. So Lori's filtering for 0.13, so she doesn't accidentally grab the wrong cost code. Again, this is all for roll-up purposes and reporting at the end of the day. So then she clicks OK. And in this case, we are ready with the line item, so let's go ahead and hit create. Like I said, this is our one line item, and then that rolls up into our cost, so she's going to go back to the cost tab. You can tell Lori's been navigating through this quite a bit. She had a couple windows open, did a copy paste, and so she's very, very familiar with navigating around here. So she just went back to the cost tab after that window closed. If in fact you have more than one line item, you just repeat the steps with the costs that are associated with that. And then the next thing is, if you have any documents that are associated with this, you would want to go to the Notes and Documents tab and do the upload process, which we showed you before. We're not going to go ahead and do that again. We're ready now to go ahead and issue this change order.
Just a quick note on the Notes and Documents. You don't want to upload anything that you don't want the contractor to see. So you're not going to want to put your IGE there. You're not going to want to put your CNM unless you want the contractor to see that.
Okay, so we're ready to issue the change order. You're going to get that lovely little pop-up box because it thinks it's making a change. You don't have to enter anything. Click the OK button. Takes you back to your change orders list there. Do you remember your number, Lori? It's going to be in a review in progress, and then it's going to go to the issued status. So we can sort by date here, 111. So it is at the top, and it is a review in progress. And we're going to refresh until it gets to the issued status, which there it is. And once that's in the issued status, we have to hit the complete button in order to get all those costs that you just created to the change order rolled up to all the budgets and financials that are in the system. And then this takes just a little bit to go through, and that change order is now in the system and now rolls up to the budget code. Well, I'm going to go ahead and have Lori take you to the budget tab real quick because it is not in the document. So she reopened up the contract that shows completed. So let's go ahead and close that and then click on the project link at the very top. So right next to company, there's a project link. This is kind of the project in a nutshell, so to speak, a project at a glance. So we have your project details, the general information, and then once that gets displayed, you're going to have a budget tab. Once you click on that budget tab, I think maybe her scripts are running. So then here you get a high-level overview of the monies that are in the budget. So the original budget was a certain amount, and you have a current budget, your original commitments, which are your contracts, your change orders that are sitting out there, and any pending commitment changes if, in fact, you had potential change orders in the system, which we're going to go over next, I believe. Oh, no, we're not going over PCOs. We're going over invoices next. I apologize. But if there were any potential change orders that were issued by the contractors, you would see them in here as a roll-up as well. The next thing, oops, do I see a question? The question is, who can enter official contract dates, notice to proceed dates, modification dates, so that they are correct dates are reflected in the monthly PRBs? Well, anyone who has access to the contract has the ability to add those dates to it. We currently have just the SREs, REs, and your field support staff who can do that. Unless, Lori, you have some additions to that.
It should only be the field support team that changes any of that information.
Well, no, he asked who can enter the official contract dates. So if they're creating it, those dates are available to them.
Kevin, are you talking just in the modifications, or are you talking in the contract overall?
Any kind of dates in the contract?
In the contract, it should be only the field support team.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so with that said, we'll close down the project. I'm going to go ahead and pause this recording for now. So with that said, with the tracking information needed, again, like Lori stated, you will need to do your pencil copy with your contractors, get your AIA forms together before you start creating these invoices. Another heed of warning here with invoices is that invoices have to be entered in the order that you're paying them and by the change order. So if you want to issue and complete an invoice before another one, you have to make sure that your change orders are in there correctly. Otherwise, you have a potential to have your dollars get a little skewed when you start looking at your budget. CFM recommends, based on what they know out in the field, to designate one person and a backup to do the input, and not everybody's making the invoices. So it's best to get specific people trained on it and have them understand the complexities underneath creating the invoices. All right, so we're going to go ahead and create an invoice, and we're going to issue an invoice in the system and see how much money it gets rolled up to the budget. So make sure you're logged into Tririga. SRE and RE are the only ones that can create an invoice. Well, the users with that permission. Then you go to your COs, POs, and RFQs. You have your contract invoices. As usual, once you get to your manager query, you have the add button in the upper right-hand corner. You get your lovely little invoice form. We want to identify this with your progress payment. So your naming convention, you should be very careful with progress payment number and then the dates that it applies to. So what dates are you going to use? Lori, number 15 will go January 1 through January, December. We'll use last month. So December 1 through December 31. And then one thing here, the numbering of, because you're naming it progress payment, Laura, you have in this particular naming, you put a number symbol, but we recommend that they do the NO period as the number because of sorting purposes. If you put that number, it'll start messing with your sorting. So as long as you're consistent, if you put a number or if you put NO and a number, you just have to be consistent so your sorting looks right when you're looking at that manager query. So in the date field, we're looking at putting the last day of the payment period. So we'll put in our date field December 31. Another heat of warning here, the contractor sees everything you put in here, so be careful what you put in your description field. Everyone actually sees it. Whoever's part of the project can see everything you're entering here. They don't have rights to edit it, but they do have an opportunity to see what's there. So you just want to be careful with your nomenclature as you're entering it. Then once those two required fields are entered, you'll notice the little asterisk. I don't think I mentioned that. Little red asterisk next to the field is a required field. Once you get those populated, you can hit Create Draft. Now the next thing we're going to do is get the contract. So your invoice is related to the contract. The contract is related to multiple change orders. So we'll go ahead and pick that contract 1 that we had selected earlier. And what this is doing, it's bringing over all of the items from the contract and the change orders, and also building the line items on the line items tab there to show what has been paid, what is retention against it, and a bunch of things. So there's a little workflow in the background. It also brings over your vendor at the bottom of the page. So once that's all done, you'll kind of see the screen change a little bit. Then you can go to your line items. So you'll want to find your amount that you're paying for this particular invoice. You'll notice that the pay item is there with its total, your previous invoice amounts. So that one's been paid. We don't want to pay any more on that one. So there's no remaining amount. Where's our CO that we just created, Lori? Should be here.
Well, it's not, the date's not within the time range, and I think I picked the wrong contract here.
Oh, okay. Well, in order to, so she's going to clear out the contract, but I want to show you. Can you just
I have a question.
Okay.
So the payment is only for modifications?
Oh no, it's for the full original commitment. So you can start paying your.
All I saw was the P numbers.
Yeah, probably just because of the training environment that we're in. The original committed amounts also show up. So what are you doing, Lori? grabbing a new contract?
Yeah.
So does that have to be loaded separately? Each line item and the amount?
When we input your contract and stuff, once you send us the information, we put in the 001 or the .11, the 002 if there's asbestos or any of that. We input all of that when we initially input the contract into Tririga.
Okay, but you put in the individual line items for the
Correct.
construction, mobilization, and all that?
It all depends on what needs to be paid on. It depends on what you tell us needs to be input. So if they use .23 funds, then yes, we put the .23 funds in. Normally, no, we do not put that in. But if you tell us that that needs to be input to be paid on, then yes, we can put it in.
Okay.
So in this particular case, you'll see that her first two line items came from the original commitment, and the rest of them start coming from change orders. So then we'll find the line item that we just created. Is that what you did? You didn't do the million.
No, it's not in the date range isn't here, so that the proof is not showing up.
Oh, okay. So we'll just deal with what we got here. So within the date range, you'll find what's available to pay on, and then you find your current invoice amount, and you place that dollar amount within that current invoice amount. And are we doing? Yep, that's it. Current invoice amount, current invoice retention. So if you're holding retention on that particular line item, you'll want to enter that. Once you do that, hit save. And what that's going to do is it's going to update these line items. Oh, I'll give you this little pop-up window because it is monetary collection of information. That pop-up window will come up on all of those types of items. Once you clicked OK, you'll see that the current amount due to the right got updated based on the invoice amount. And so okay, based on retention and invoice, you have a total at the bottom of $13.50. At this point, we are ready to upload any documents. If you want to upload documents to this change order, remember those documents everyone gets to see, contractor as well. Same old process, upload, grab, or drag and drop. And then we have to issue this invoice. And you're going to get your little pop-up box again once you hit issue.
Okay, I just want to note something real quick. When you're in the line item, you'll see that there's a remaining amount to be paid. The second one here for the 002, you can see here that it's a negative, which means that it's overpaid on. Tririga will not tell you that you're overpaying. So you need to get in the habit of whatever you're putting in the current invoice amount, looking at the remaining amount next to it, and make sure you have that amount to pay.
Yeah, does that happen a lot in the field, Lori? Because I mean, I would imagine that people are looking very closely at their paying. I know this is a test environment, and we did some stuff in here.
It all depends. If the budget transfers and budget changes and stuff are not done in Tririga, you say that it's overpaid, but there really is money in there.
Okay, so she hit the issue button. The pop-up came up. She'll have to click OK in order for it to continue down its path. What happens? It takes you back down to your invoices, and you'll see the status change to revision in progress. And you have to keep refreshing in order to get to the complete status, like we did with the change order. So a little refresh icon, and there we go. It's at issued status. We'll open it up. And again, we have to hit complete in order to get it through the budget roll-ups and financials, and that would complete the contract invoice process. All right, so we're going to jump into correspondence, and correspondence is a method within Tririga that allows everyone and anyone to communicate concerns, questions. Although you have the RFI, you can use this correspondence to attach other types of records to the correspondence. So let's just say the architect has a question about an RFI that came in. They can come in here, they can create a correspondence, and they can send that to the SRE, the RE. They can even send it to an outside contractor via an email. They don't get to see all of the details of Tririga, but they get to see certain things that are posted in Tririga through this correspondence. So a correspondence gives you the ability to take some of those records that have been created, like an RFI, a submittal, and we'll show you all the types that are in there, to internally in Tririga to people who have logins who can see the detail, as well as externally to people who don't have a login to Tririga to give them some sort of heads up about something. So we're going to go to the Add button and create a correspondence. There's a few fields here that are marked as required. You've got your name. We do not have a specific naming convention for correspondence because anyone can create them. But one thing you have to do first and foremost is select your contract that you're associating this particular correspondence to. That's the standard across all of the forms. You have to pick your contract before you can start doing anything else on the form. So the next thing is the date field. What's this in reference to? What date? Maybe you had a conversation with somebody and you're trying to remind them of that conversation via a tracking within Tririga. So you'll change that date to the date of the conversation. Then you go in and you put the name. Anybody on the phone have an idea of what they might be sharing on an RFI? Let's just say RFI question on this one. And then if you're going to reference your RFI, you probably want to add as much detail in the name that you can about that RFI. There you go. The number, and then question. The next thing is, who is this going to within the application? So you could pick one person that is responsible for responding to this. We're logged in as test 27. Is that correct, Lori?
Yes.
Okay, so you're going to send this to 21, who is the AE. Or wait, that's the contractor. Contractor. So we'll pick the contractor as the person that it's going to, and they have to respond. Now, when you pick the person, the system doesn't automatically send it to them until you pick the response required field. So we've got a big fat warning in the system that if you don't select the checkbox for response required, it will not make it to their inbox, and they won't even know that they have to respond. So there's a checkbox in the detail section that you'll want to check as required. And then we have all the required fields populated. Let's go ahead and create draft. Did I bypass that entire section, Lori, or did you just start populating it?
Well, you said about the response required, so I just put required by date in.
Okay. So, Lori, there's some fields there that Lori populated, giving some additional information required by, let's scroll down just a little bit. And then also, there's some things that are pre-populated, delivery method, Tririga, intended for information only, date sent. I don't think we're, oh no, so that's populated later. And then we get to the body of this. That is your area that you put all of your over 1,000 characters. If you're typing a letter, type in what you want to ask and all of the details about it. One thing that we didn't discuss today is that Tririga does not have spell check. So if you're worried about your spelling, you might want to do it in Word first, check it for spelling, copy and paste what you're doing and put it into the body here. The next thing is, let's go ahead and hit save. So this correspondence, we are referencing an RFI, but nowhere in here besides the name have we identified what RFI. There's a section up at the top called related data, and these are all the different types of records that you can associate to this correspondence. The very first one in the list is related requests for information. Once we check that box, the system says, okay, well, we know you want to attach an RFI, so it changes the form a little bit and gives you a new section. That new section is displayed, and you have a find button at the top. Once you hit find, it's going to return all of the RFIs related to the contract that you selected previously in the currently viewing. So if you're afraid that there's so many RFIs, we are only displaying RFIs that you've selected a contract to, so they have to be associated. And then, of course, you can use your filters to put a little bit more information in here. What are you going to, Lori's got an idea what she wants to type in here. So use that as your filter. Select, so took her down to the one RFI that she had written up above. She clicks OK. Then if you accidentally pick the wrong one, you do have an opportunity to get rid of it. You have to check the box to the left and then hit the deassociate. Another thing that happens, say for instance you say, I don't want to do RFIs, I made a mistake, this is really a submittal. If you go back up to your related section and uncheck RFI, the system will automatically remove that RFI for you, so it doesn't stay attached. And then let's go ahead and click on RFI again. Once we click on that, you'll see that if you say, well, it really was an RFI, it'll display that section again, but you have to go find that RFI again. So unchecking it will literally remove anything that you did, and if you recheck it, you'll have to redo that particular component. All right, so now the next part is, do we want to send this to people outside of Tririga? So there's a section down below that's the CC section. And this is kind of a special little section. You can send this to people who are Tririga users and people who are not Tririga users. So if you hit it, we always recommend that you always use the find button first. People are identified in Tririga with their email address. So if you know the email address of the person you're sending it to, you'll want to check to see if they exist first. Let's do Farah. Farah's F-A-R-R-A, yeah. What do you have? What did you type in there? So I know that Farah is in here, and then just enter. So there's a few Farah emails in here. If the email of the person is not in the system, you can cancel out of this and hit the add button. So we always recommend they use the find first, and then what happens is it gives you the opportunity to create what we call a contact card. The person's last name, first name, and their email address. Say for instance you have a John Smith that you're sending it to, but there's several John Smiths, and you type in the email that matches the exact John Smith email, it will not let you create the contact card. You'll have to go back to the find feature to look for that. So let's just go ahead and, we don't have to do this now, Lori. Let's just go ahead and close it. I wanted to explain it. Oh, you got it. As long as you know what you're typing in there. And then just type in, well, you've got other required fields. So if you knew Farah by Ferris and you typed it wrong, and you're typing her last name a little different than she normally does, and you hit create contact card, it gives you a warning. You cannot create that. You have to go look for it. You have to use the find feature. All right, so let's cancel out of here and let's just find someone. This eliminates a lot of bad data from being created within Tririga. And nobody wants the nightmare of cleaning up all that data. So we'll pick, I don't know. Who do you want to pick, Lori? Yourself? Ah, she's got a special user in there. So she created a contact card before and she can reuse it. From here, we just go ahead and click, sorry about that. If in fact there are documents that you want to associate to this, always be sure to put it in the notes and documents. Same old process. The forms throughout Tririga are the same. You have comments and you have notes and comments and related documents. The upload feature works exactly the same on every single form. Next thing, we'll just go ahead and issue this out. Once we issue this, anybody who's been named, well, I apologize. We have to issue it. We have to go find that it's been issued. Reopen it and hit complete. That final complete will send it to the people that were in the to section as well as in the CC section. Is everybody else hearing that beeping? All right, so once she completes this, the person identified as the to person has to respond to that correspondence. So the person who received it should also receive an email. They'll be notified of that correspondence. They'll log in to their account. So this one was test 21, correct? Oh, it's still routing. Yeah, it's going to remain routing in progress until they respond to it. So this is where that special section that we saw when we first came on, my pending correspondence. Only correspondence records will display in that section at the bottom. You'll see this user only has one correspondence. So when they click on it and open it up, they will see the same thing that we saw before. The related records, the to lookup, everything. It's read only, and they cannot modify anything about the correspondence. The only action they have is to hit respond. They can review everything, and then once they hit respond, a new window appears that gives them the opportunity to enter their response to this to this correspondence. So the correspondence has an embedded RFI, and so they're responding about the RFI in this correspondence. And then they hit send. In order to review the responses on those correspondence records, anyone who has access to this correspondence, we'll just go here, within the correspondence manager, you go find the correspondence that was sent out. Click on the hyperlink to open it up once it displays. So that one up at the top once she sorts by date. And then on the notifications tab at the very top, this is where it's going to track all of the correspondence. So if this got revised and it went out again, you would see the information that was typed in. You have to click on the link to open that up to see what was typed in. All right, so we're going to talk about All right, so we're going to go over reports real quickly. Your user accounts will have the ability to look at specific reports within the application. At your home portal, you'll find your reporting capabilities down at the bottom where it says My Reports. Sorry, I had a window covering it up. Within the My Reports, you have a couple of menus here, My Reports and Community Reports. Community reports are the ones that are shared with the community within Tririga, and those have been developed by CFM field support staff that we work with and NKF, CFI, who are the developing party of the Tririga application. So there are several in here. There are some BERT reports, which are formatted reports that help you identify certain things. It's basically a listing of, say, RFIs or submittals. And one way to get to them is by spelling the word BERT in the naming convention. So we'll just run the RFI. Which one are you going to run, Lori? So to the left, you've got a little green arrow. That's your run report icon. So if you click on that, that pushes out the report to get started. On many of these BERT reports, it allows you to filter based on some drop downs. And this might take a second to build here. So give it a second. This one doesn't look like it's going to run. Lori, can we pick the 1/4 from the bottom RFI log? Oh, maybe it's just the environment.
Okay,
Yeah, there we go. This one's looking a little bit better.
there we go.
There we go. So once this filtering criteria comes up, you can either leave it null and click OK and it runs everything, or you can start picking the values for which you want to run the report against. So your regional office, central, eastern, etc., your project name, your contract number, and this is the test environment has a lot of information. And you have to pick from the drop-down list. You cannot type it in because it's looking at the system and it's giving you the exact value. So then next thing is you just click OK and it runs that BERT report. Again, everything that's in the community you have access to run. You do not have access to change those reports. So if you need something to be changed, you'll have to reach out to the field support staff, Lori, Farah, or Nicole, and then we have to identify how long it might take and all kinds of things that through our change management control that we've identified earlier in the contract. So this gives you some information. If you want to create your own report, you do have the ability to copy this report and make it your own and run it so you're not querying the entire database. Another thing here with reports is you can export it out. At the upper left, there's some icons, and we use the export report that gives you some options to export it out as a PDF or Excel, or some of them come out really weird. So we use PDF and we use Excel. In this case, we're just going to PDF it. You can then take this report and open or save to your local hard drive so you can have that information in a report. Go ahead, save and open.
Did you say that within the system I can filter the reports, or I have to export it to an Excel to filter the reports?
There were some criteria up front that allowed you to filter based on certain things. So by contract, by project, by contract, by region, there's about 5 different filter criteria that you can choose. This one specifically was everything, yeah.
So on this screen, let's say that I originally filtered on one specific contract, and it gave me all the RFIs on the contract. Over on the status column, I see various statuses. Can I filter then once again on that status column just to see everything that's in progress or whatever?
So once you've exported it, you're stuck with that. But let's close that window, Lori. I can't remember if status was one of the parameters that we built in. No, not there on the actual report when you hit run.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think you have to export this to Excel and then filter it in Excel.
Okay, I mean, if that's possible, that's fine. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, you can export that data to Excel. And quite frankly, there's other reports without having to do this that you can do that prior. So to me,
the status is on here. I'm sorry, I misspoke. But now if we pick it here, it only pulls those, correct? You see that?
That is correct.
So if he wants to see everything for the contract, it's better to leave this null and then filter it once he puts it into Excel.
Quite honestly, if you're trying to do kind of active live to check things out, I would do it within the project on that manager query, not even through these reports. I think these reports might hinder you a little bit. So I would go back to the querying of the records inside at your home, and then go here because you have more options of filtering than those reports. So here, put part of the contract and then use the status to just show the ones that are in draft or issued or review in progress, and the contract number. And that'll give you a smaller list to look through, and you can export this stuff out. And not to mention, you have a real live connection to the actual record. So they say, well, yeah, it's in draft, but you can open up that record and say, yeah, I see it's in draft. You're missing all kinds of information. Why isn't it done yet? So you have the live data directly at your hands when you're running through those reports.